about the future, we have to talk about the past, right? We have to talk about how we got here and how are we all sitting here at the Men's World Cup during the Youth Festival ahead of the biggest tournament in the world and talking about women's football. That in itself is awesome, and it says a lot about how far we've come. And you all are leaders in that and have really helped us get here. So before we kind of talk about the future, I want to talk about how that happened. And I would just love it if you guys could each just share your journey here in terms of how you first kind of got into football and became a leader as a woman in football. We'll start with you, Isha. Turn it
on. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Thank you so very much. First of all, I'd like to say how very humbling and honored I am to be here with you, especially in front of all these young leaders in the world, tomorrow's future generation, tomorrow's leaders. I'm very honored. Thank you very much. First of all, I'm from Sierra Leone. It's a small country in West Africa. I was a former FA president in my country, the first female FA president, and at that time I think there were 2 of us in the world, and then Sonia, and the only female FA president in the African continent. But it didn't. But that was not an overnight. It wasn't something that happened within a year or 2 or anything like that. My father, he's still alive, my best friend, is a former banker, but he was also the founder of a very established football club in Sierra Leone called Eastern Lions, and they still very much are that. A very big, huge following, like a Man United, very noisy, they're red, and what have you. And as the only daughter in my family, he would take me to the stadium from the age of 5, and we would go and watch, and so all that ambience in the house, the winds, the highs, the lows, everything, and it was in my DNA. But to cut a long story short, we've also had a brutal civil war in Sierra Leone. I'm sure you've all heard of the Blood Diamonds, the child soldiers, the war in Sierra Leone that was probably about close to 30 years ago. So fast forward, it left a lot of destruction in my country and a lot of displaced children as well, and a lot of orphans. And I was educated in England, but I did some schooling in Sierra Leone, and I started to return back to Sierra Leone. I didn't want to leave my father behind. I didn't want to leave my parents behind. So just after the war, I started to go back to Sierra Leone, and the country was littered with destruction, trying to rebuild, and all these kids. You come from countries where every corner there's a child playing football. If they don't have a football, they'll use anything to kick around. And Sierra Leone's no different. And that's how I got involved, taking kids off the streets, putting them back into school, getting them back into social, cohesion, if you like, and using football as a tool to do that, to bring them together. So I did that. It's a long story, emotional sides to it. I don't know, we don't have enough time for that. But it was through that. I brought these kids from the streets, put them together. We did the education. That was the bribe. I do the football with you if you do the education with me. And before you knew it, what was a community team became the team that was traveling around the world for international youth tournaments. We started spreading the word around about our country, and the kids were super talented. And the Chelseas, the Liverpools, all of them started calling these kids up and our club to represent. And that's how we climbed. 2nd division, 1st division, and we became a Premier League club. Till today we are. And we have some of these boys playing for the national teams and some of them playing in big clubs. So that's really my story in a nutshell. That's how I got in. And that's how I became, I guess, the FA president without even planning or thinking I would be. And here I am today, using football as a big, big inspirational tool to bring about change, meaningful change for the youth, for gender, for everything. So amazing. That's my story.
Absolutely. Thank you, Aisha. We'll come back to some of the challenges that you faced around that in a moment, but incredibly inspiring. Sonia?
Okay. Oh, good. Yes. Thank you very much. Good morning. It's still morning to all of you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Generation Amazing. You're amazing. To all the smiling, enthusiastic faces in the room. My journey into football was a little bit different. I didn't start playing football as a child like most of you. I was a track and field and softball athlete, which I represented my country at a very early age. I got involved in football at a very late age in my life. I was an adult. I was actually working in the legal field. And one of my friends invited me out to a scrimmage match, and I'm like, but I don't play, you know. In my country, it's very small. The population size is probably the population for one of your small villages. So everyone knew that I was a multi-talented athlete. I guess they figured that if you can play everything else, you can play this sport. I couldn't. I learned very quickly. And I started playing, and I was also captain of my national team for many years. Fast track. Thank you, thank you. Fast track. And around the early 2000, I started volunteering for my association because, of course, I'm playing the sport now. I want to get more involved. My playing career is going downhill, so I wanted to make a contribution to the sport, which wasn't properly structured at the time. And so I volunteered in every capacity that I could, and I took on the initiative to form the first women's football committee. Thank you, thank you. I've been doing that for a period of time when I was approached by the then vice president and the president of my FA. At the time, I must say, just so I can get everything into context here, over the years, our executive committee at the time was made up of strictly men. And in my country, they refer to it as the all boys club. And I believe that it quite naturally was. So I was, an opening came up, it was election year, and I had been asked, are you interested in being a part of the executive committee? Of course, why not? There are no women on the executive committee. Even though I was very much involved, I figured that if I had a seat around the table, then my voice would be heard, I can make my presence known, and we can have more opportunities for the women's game, because at the time, we didn't even have a proper grassroots program. The focus was strictly on men's football and the men's national team. My vice president and president at the time, they coordinated to get me nominated. And of course, to give you a little context again, at that time, we had 11 EXCO members, which included vice presidents and different offices. It was a given that at every AGM, these persons would have been re-elected to the EXCO. It didn't matter because they controlled the clubs, they controlled everything. It was really an all-boys club. And they got me nominated for a position that became available. At the time, that position of Assistant General Secretary, they dubbed it, was an elected position. And it was, changes was made in the statutes then that it became a 4-year position. So one of my vice presidents, who was sure to be elected at the AGM anyway, decided then that, because at that time it was an annual position, decided that he probably didn't want to be bothered with being reelected every year, even though it was a sure thing, that he was now going to go for the assistant GS position that became open. And then my vice president and president very quickly came back to me and said, oops, Sonia, just one problem, you know. we really wanted you to be a part of this exco, to be nominated and everything, but now this member, he has his eyes set on this position, and I don't feel that you will get the support to be elected. And right away I became annoyed, and my first reaction was to say, you know what, forget it, these people are never gonna let me in here. I went away and I came back and I said to him, well, I'm sorry, but I'm already nominated and I'm going for it. He said, but it doesn't make sense because you're not gonna get the support. You're not gonna be elected. And I knew deep down inside that I wasn't going to be elected, but I had to think about a few things. Number one, I had all of the women who were involved in the sport at that time rallying behind me. And they were so excited when they heard that finally, we're going to have a voice on the exco. Finally, someone is stepping forward. I couldn't let them down. And then I thought to myself, if I want to be a part of change, I can't be that, I can't accept that these people don't want to embrace me. I have to fight to get there no matter what it took. I went forward for the election knowing that I would lose, and I did. But I felt proud of the fact that I was determined to fight for what I want, not only for myself personally, but for all the women who were depending on me. I felt that it sent a very strong message that we would not be denied, that we were going to stick the course no matter what. And that is what I did. And then, because I took that stance, I was invited to serve on the exco, not as a member with voting rights, but what was important, and that's why I always like to say to the women coming behind, not because you don't have a vote at the table doesn't mean your voice isn't heard. The most important thing is to have a seat around that table, because you'll get through to someone. And for me, that was important, that I had a voice around that table. And I think that is where the ceiling first got broken, and that is where my journey started, and the rest became history.
Amazing. And obviously, you now definitely have a seat around the table, an incredible story of how to persevere and to show your voice. Awesome. Jill, sort of a different journey for you.
Yeah, hey everybody, how y'all doing? You good? All right. Yes, I grew up in England, and like many of you, I didn't actually have the opportunity to play football growing up. It was only for boys at the time. I'm pretty old, so it was a long time ago, but never had the opportunity to play in England. I would play in the schoolyard with the boys, I'd play in the backyard with my brother, and it wasn't until I moved to the US when I was 15 that I finally got the opportunity to actually play and join a team, and really find an opportunity to play something I loved. I grew up growing up playing a bunch of different sports, but football was my first love, and I got that opportunity when I moved to the States. And really, it was just a vehicle for me to get my education. I had no intention of being a coach. There wasn't coaches, female coaches. There were no role models out there. There was one or two, but it really wasn't a pathway to a career. And I went to business school, and I came home one day, and a friend of mine offered me a job to be an assistant coach at the University of Maryland, and the pay was $6,000 a year. And I told my parents, and my mother was like, "Are you freaking crazy? You're throwing away your education to go and become a coach." My father was like, "Follow your passion," and that's exactly what I did. I decided to follow my heart over a paycheck, go into coaching, and really I never looked back. I loved it. I love everything about it. I think coaches, what we try and do is curate, facilitate, and help people grow and chase their ambitions. And it was so rewarding for me that I continued. I was a college coach. I played in college coach. And then one day, the president of U.S. Soccer said, "Jill, I'd like you to apply for our women's national team job." And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure I wanted to do that either. It was just, again, I was just doing something I loved. But I loved international football. And here was suddenly an opportunity for me to coach the best team in the world. And I really couldn't turn it down. And what I'll say to you, and I think you hear a similar vein right across the board here, that persistence has what's gotten all of us on this stage to this point. The barriers we faced, the obstacles we faced. And there were many times where there was a lot of criticism levied because we were the first to do what we did. But I will tell you that sport helped me find my voice. It helped me find a career. It's given me so much confidence through sport to chase the things that I love to do. And as a woman here now, I'm incredibly proud to be in front of you guys. Find your voice, find your passion, and enjoy your life and what's ahead of you. Thank you.
That's awesome. And we'll come back to that perseverance piece in a moment. Jess, you've had a slightly similar journey as Aisha. Share with us how you got here in football, or soccer, as you obviously will call it.
Well, I'm definitely not going to call it soccer in this room. I might get booed off the stage. So nice to be here with all of you, and actually I have children closer to your age than I am, which is a bit of a reality check for me. So thank you all for your incredible questions to Kelly, and hopefully we'll have time to take questions from all of you. So it's actually quite interesting to me when you think about sport and the way that it connects people from different backgrounds. You hear that I'm from the States, and I actually grew up in New York City. And for all of you who come from all over the world, you probably think that means that, like Jill, when she came to the States, that it gave any opportunity that she could have ever wanted. But I actually grew up in an urban area in Brooklyn, New York, where in the early 1980s, there were very few fields available in cities, and that's still actually the case in the United States. In urban environments, there are so many fewer opportunities for communities of color and for communities that are centering around cities. And there actually were no fields available for girls in my childhood. So I actually didn't have the opportunity to play. Like Kelly, I was a dancer. That was my athletic pursuit because there really wasn't any other choice available to me. But I learned through my childhood and actually being in a community of color that as a minority in that community, that sport was really the catalyst for social change. It was one of the few things that brought people together from different backgrounds. And I had a moment, actually, when I was around your age, I was 16, where I was a spectator, I was a fan in the stands, and I saw two people embrace following a goal. And they were two people who so clearly came from different backgrounds, and watching them hug and high five after a goal really was this moment in time for me where I was obsessed throughout my childhood with the things that broke down barriers. And I asked these two people whether they knew each other before that moment, and they both said they didn't. They just shared a love for that particular team. And I decided, despite the fact that I didn't have the opportunity to play myself, that I would dedicate my life to working in sport and leveraging sport for social change from a management perspective. And from the time I was 16 until today, almost every decision in my life has been made with that pursuit in mind and that end goal in mind. I spent most of my career actually working in the United States in men's professional sport. I've worked on behalf of the National Basketball Association, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, in hockey, and watched the way that men's sport, without really having to even prove themselves or prove their value, just had so many opportunities given to them. And I had the opportunity to really challenge all of those assumptions when I took on this role as commissioner of the NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, and seeing firsthand how different the starting point is for girls and women, even in the United States, and how hard it is to get people to take us seriously. But now seeing how things can change so quickly when you show up and demand the value that you believe you deserve. And so really excited to be here with you all, and excited for this conversation and to learn from these incredible panelists.
Thanks, Jess. So A common theme we're seeing here is overcoming some challenges to get here, and all of these women here are leaders in their own right. Literally the leader of the current US National Professional Women's Soccer League, the leader of the most successful women's football team really ever, the first ever female FIFA council members. Like, these are incredible leadership positions, but obviously the journey here was not easy, and there are some challenges that you have all overcome to get here. And Isha, I just want to sort of go to you with this. What was one of your biggest challenges that you feel like you overcame to become this coach and this leader of this team that suddenly became on the global spotlight?
I think the real challenges came from within when I actually became the FA president. But going back, looking, when we were chasing this dream, and my football club, the slogan is chasing the dream, and that's exactly what we were doing with these kids. That's what I was doing. I mean, these were kids from nothing, and I wanted to encourage them that, look, every child, everybody has a right to dream. We all dream, but it's what you do with your dreams. You just don't dream and say, oh gosh, wouldn't it be nice? You need to chase that dream, and this is what I encouraged these kids to do. Look, a lot of what was being said and how people perceived me and what I was doing, I had no idea, didn't care, didn't want to know. We were focused. We had a situation in our country. I was very passionate about what it was that I wanted to do with these children. I had the time, the energy, the resources then. So there were challenges because a lot of people were thinking, this woman's got too much money to blow, she's mad. And who would want to be taking children out of the country? They're going to run away. They're going to breach the immigration laws, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we did these things. We went out, we won medals. We came back, we got invited. Real Madrid invited us. We got, there's Brazilians here, Cruzeiros. We did exchange programs. I brought Cruzeiros into Sierra Leone. They went out there, Liberty Professionals for the Ghanaians that are here, Buddha Glimt for the Norwegians that are here. We were doing all of that. There were challenges that I wasn't seeing or hearing, okay? But the biggest challenge for me was when I actually became the FA president, I went unopposed. I didn't even fight for it. There were just a bunch of men that were talking a lot of big talk about what they would do and what they could do and who's to blame with the failure of football growth in our country. And so I just went, 7 days before the end of the nomination, and I just threw my hat in and I said, look, all you men are talking a lot of, but I've got a team, this is what I've done. And I don't have a manifesto, but if you like what I've done in football over the past years and where we've gotten, then come with me, follow me. And I would try to replicate this nationally instead of just as a team, because it is a success story. This works. It's not what people are thinking. And I became very popular. I was voted in. But I became very unpopular at the same time. So the politics got in. I didn't see myself as a woman in a man's field. I don't know whether that's gullible of me or naive. Like I said, I was focused. But only when one time, somebody went on the national radio and said, and I'm sorry if this makes for not pleasant hearing, but it is, and just said outright, they will not work for a prostitute as an FA president. And I was like, oh my goodness, is that me? They're referring to it. Oh, is it because I'm a woman? That's when it hit that, my goodness, we've got challenges here. And as a woman, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not wanted. And so the story went on and on. I challenged the status quo. I challenged corruption, trafficking, match fixing, and I almost landed in jail, because I wanted to do the right thing. So these challenges were there, and it multiplied. For all of you from Africa, you know what I'm talking about. It's not so straightforward, and things can go very, very wrong when you want to bring about meaningful, sincere, honest change. And it got me into a lot of trouble, but I'm happy that I persevered. I'm happy that I switched off. And it wasn't me trying to prove to women that you can do it. It was really the other way around. Other women, other young girls looking at me and like, my goodness, if this woman's going to survive this, then we can. We're going to join in this race. And like I said, the stories are many with my journey, but for the challenges.
Just a
I
few
would say
challenges
yes.
then.
Yeah,
Just a few.
just that.
Yeah.
So it's that one.
And I think that the lesson in just doing what you think is right and doing the work well and trying to sort of ignore those discerning voices is something that we can all really relate to, and it's an amazing lesson, and congratulations for overcoming that. I mean, it's sort of, Sonia, you shared already a few of the challenges you faced trying to, as you said, get a voice. And I'm curious as to, once you got that voice, you now have that a very strong voice within FIFA Council. How do you feel like you've used your voice? What's something that you feel is something that you feel like you've really created change?
I believe, well, it didn't start it with the FIFA Council, because that's another story for another day. But I think where my voice first started being heard in the grand scheme of things was basically at the CONCACAF Council level, because I'm also a CONCACAF Council member. That's our region. And I've been around for quite a bit of time. I've seen 3 presidents in that position. And over the years, we've had many discussions as it relates to women's football and the development of women's football. There was a lot of lip service paid. But I think with our current, well, I know for a fact, with our current CONCACAF Council makeup, that we didn't just talk the talk, but we basically walked the walk. And that's when I realized that someone was actually not only hearing my voice, but they thought about it, they had the same goals and aspirations for the women's game. And I think in our region, that the biggest game changer as a result of that was the CONCACAF W, launching the CONCACAF W initiative.
Case in point, I mean, the fact that you have a women's component and counterpart to CONCACAF is incredible. Thank you. Jill, I think considering the fact that you've won 2 World Cups, I would love to kind of hear your view on what opportunities you feel like that created. The women came home after this, and there was so much press, and there was so much excitement. What do you feel like that sort of did for the women's game, but also just generally for the women players and yourself?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think after the 2015, I mean, it'd been 16 years since the U.S. had won a World Cup. So we won in 2015, and immediately you just saw this incredible bump, right? Bump in terms of little girls now suddenly see heroes. You see little girls want to go out and play, and not just little girls, little boys. So not only did it sort of showcase the sport, that now people were inspired to go out and play it, it also, I think, sent a message that people have an appetite for this. It's women's sports, so we saw a bounce in sponsorship getting on board, so now businesses and industries suddenly saw sport as something that they could get behind, invest in. And for the players themselves, they suddenly went from, fairly unknown entities to now they're household names, and they're growing their brand. At the end of the day, what sport is to people, it is competitive, it breaks all barriers, but it's about creating heroes and stories. And so these players suddenly became a part of the conversation in the landscape of sport. And they were females, and that was pretty unprecedented. You heard of a Billie Jean King or a Florence Griffith Joyner, but suddenly now you're seeing these players become household names. And then for that to now hit in 2019 with the exposure of social media, a billion, I think it was here earlier, 1 billion viewers watched the final. It suddenly put a massive spotlight that I think, women's football is the global game for women. It's played all over the world. I think it inspires people. I think now, as I said, sponsors have gotten on board. You suddenly realize that this is not going away, and we're just on the cusp now of continuing to grow and elevate. And with every World Cup, every iteration, I think our sport will amplify and grow. And what does that mean? Well, it creates heroes, but it also creates an industry. It creates, jobs, and more importantly, it sends a massive message about where women are in terms of taking, we're 51% of the population, taking our place, not just in society, but in sport as well.
Yeah, representation is crucial. We're going to go to the audience for questions shortly, but just before we do that, Jess, there's been a few iterations of the National Women's Soccer League over the years, and you're now the leader of the current one and the most successful one. And the previous season that we just saw was amazing, more fans than ever, more owners, more teams. Why do you feel that this is the time and this league is the one that is succeeding? What do you feel like has happened to enable that to happen?
Well, I like to say to my staff that, and we've talked about this too, that we have to show up like the league we want to be. We hear a lot of our players in our league talk about how historically girls and women in sport have been socialized to believe that they have to celebrate getting crumbs. They have to celebrate just having a chance to play. And we have to value ourselves so that we can demand more and get more. And if we don't show up at the table to set the table for the professionalism we expect from our broadcast, from our partnerships, from our talent and people who are actually working in the front office within the sport, then we're not going to get the outcome that we're all seeking, which is for people to be as excited to watch the girls and women as they are to watch the boys and men. And I think in part for me, that expectation comes from having worked my entire career in men's sports. That's what the men do. They show up and expect it to be professional and have more than 1 million viewers. So why should we expect any different? And this year, for the first time in the history of women's football in the US, we were on prime time on national broadcast television for our championship. I think that deserves a round of applause. Yeah. That was a really special moment. And for those of you who don't follow US sports as closely as maybe we do domestically, we were up against the World Series, Major League Baseball World Series, which is national pastime baseball, and college football, which is one of the most popular sports to watch on television. And we had almost 1 million viewers watching our championship. 1 million people watched our championship. And everyone told us that that was an impossible goal. And all we did differently this year was say that we expected to be treated like a professional sport. The women on the pitch did exactly the same thing that they've been doing for decades, so they didn't have to do anything different. It was all of us around the game that had to push, demand more, and when we demanded more, we got more. And so sometimes you have to show up and act as if it's going to be, and if the product deserves that attention and value, it will come.
I love that, Jess. It's every time she says it, I'm like, it's so true. You have to professionalize. Do not be grateful for the crumbs. Demand equality. And that's what you did, and that's why it succeeded. So we talked a bit about that we have to talk about the past to get here where we're talking about the future. But you guys are the future, right? Like, no offense, Jess. You just said aging, you have to grapple with it. Like, we're all older. It's time. So in the true nature of passing it on, would love for you guys to ask the questions around what you want to know from the most prominent leaders in this sport from a women's perspective, truly. What do you want to know about where the future of this game is going for women? There's a question there. Stand up, just so she sees you.
Hello, my name is Stephanie from France, Saint-Martin, and I would like to thank you for being here and to show us that girls, women, could come here as far as you can, and that's very amazing. And the question that I wanted to ask is that, what would be the feeling that you all get when you were like surrounded by men, or when you weren't allowed to play? What was that feeling, and how did you keep going and not being discouraged?
Sonia?
That's a really great question. So I'll share with you, I think I have many stories, but I'll share with you the most appropriate one for that. And it was my experience when I was first elected to the FIFA Council. I mean, it was earth-shattering that I was even elected to the FIFA Council, because as one would imagine, as a woman of color coming from a very small country, coming into men's dominated not only sport, but an environment that it wasn't easy. I had my challenges. And I could remember when I got the news, I was extremely excited about it. My country was behind me. Women all over the world was behind me at that time. I was one of 3 women who were elected to the FIFA Council for the first time ever. So I walked, thank you. I can remember walking in that room, and I was being watched like, what are you doing here? Moments I thought that it was all in my head, and then I very quickly learned that it wasn't. It was a real reality. And it really hit me one day when we had a discussion around the table, and I made a comment, and I can remember one of the older council members who was there for many, many, many years made a comment. He quickly interjected and said something about men's football, and he made a comment to say, okay, let's get back to the real discussion. And I felt really deflated. And I walked out of that room, and I could remember my then CONCACAF president, who was the vice president of FIFA, walked up to me and he said, what's going on? And I said, you know, I was so excited to have a seat around this table. I know that I'm not wanted here, not only because I feel that way, but people are blatantly showing it to me, and now today the comment that was made. I don't look forward to coming to these meetings. Can you imagine? I did not look forward to going to my FIFA Council meeting, and he said to me, sit down, look at me, why are you here? I said, because I have a contribution to make, and I want to be a part of change. He said, exactly. You have the same goals as everyone sitting around this table, and you do have a legitimate contribution to make. You're not here because someone offer you this seat or just give it to you. You earn this seat, and don't let anybody make you feel any different. And I think that switched the light on for me. And from that day on, no matter how much person showed me that I wasn't wanted around that table, I was determined to be persistent, and without being defiant or anything, just show them my worth and what my value, what I was really there to do, and eventually I earned that respect. So I say to the girls, no matter what kind of pushback you're getting, just be persistent and determined. You know why you're there. You have a real contribution to make. If we walk away that easily and we give up that easily, then we would never get to where we want to be in the women's sport, and development in women's football and leadership would never get to where we want it to be.
Thanks, Sonia. Incredible. We're just going to keep it to one response per question just to make sure we get as many voices as possible. So next question. I think there's one in front. I'll let the guys with the mics decide. Just shout it out. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Adarsha, and my question is for Joe. So you talked about how your financial, you went against your financial pressure because of your passion. So that's something, you know, I see on a daily basis. And I just wanted to ask you, what were you really passionate about? What passion did you look forward to playing football as a whole, or did you want to just get out of your comfort zone and just go out there despite having to pay so much for it? And how did you deal with your financial struggles after that? Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. How did I make ends meet? Well, I cleaned houses. I did a second job because, you know, obviously I would go to practice and do this. But I knew that after working in the business world for a year and a half, sitting in an office from 9 to 5, it just didn't light my fire. And I always remember my dad saying to me, if you find something you love, it's not going to be work. And what do I love about coaching? What did I love about it? It was, I always sort of say a coach kind of is a caretaker of dreams. It's working with young people. It's trying to help facilitate their ambition and goals. It's being on the pitch. It's being a mentor. It's just, it's more of a holistic role. I think if I wasn't a coach, I would have ended up being a teacher because I just love the idea of helping facilitate growth. But I love the sport, and I love working with young people. And I truly, you put in the hours, you don't keep track of it and you find a way, if you really want to do it. And let's be honest, for years and years, even when I went on to be a head coach and a professional coach, the pay disparity is massive, right, between females in the same profession and males. But I think it's, to what all these women here believe is you want to be that agent of change. You want to be someone that can pave the way. I'm at a point in my life, it's not about what's so much ahead of me, it's about how can I make it better for those that come after me. So it's sharing the message, sharing the journey. I used to stand on a pitch as the head coach of a team, and the referee would walk right past me, go over to my male assistant coach and introduce themselves, and he'd be like, she's the coach. That's just the stereotypes and the things that you have to come through, but you can't let that dissuade you. You've got to stay the course. You've got to continue to believe in what you do. And at the end of the day, it works out. And I feel very fortunate to have had the path and the career. And the other thing I'll say to you, and everyone on this panel will say the same thing, the reality is there's going to be moments that are absolutely amazing, and there's going to be moments that suck and that sting. But both of those, the highs and the lows, are going to what makes the journey real and make the journey, I think, so valuable to you. And so, yeah, I would say you're going to hit a lot of obstacles, but stay the course.
Thanks, Jill. And I also think it's not lost on any of us that in a lot of cases you have your own financial restrictions or family restrictions that might not let you necessarily make that choice, right? And I think we all understand that, and sort of the beauty also of being part of football or any sport really is that it does also offer other opportunities and pathways beyond that, which would allow you that financial independence as well. So you can take many different directions, right? It doesn't only have to be that one. Next question.
Hi.
I heard of Mike already.
Yeah. Hi. My question is for Jess. So I also grew up in New York City, and I'm wondering what are ways that we can make change in our smaller and more personal communities?
Thank you. Where in New York City are you from?
Manhattan.
Okay. So, yeah, I like to say that no matter what your platform, you all have an opportunity to influence people around you. And so trying to look at, I think, my takeaway from what Sonia was saying and others, just finding allies. I think for anyone who's from an underrepresented community or a marginalized group, whether it's gender, race, religion, or otherwise, we have to recognize that we live within a society where there are power imbalances, and that the people in positions of power, we have to find ways to embrace them and have them feel part of the social movement. And so for me, my strategy throughout my entire career, and really this is the first time in 25 years where I'm surrounded by other women and frankly people of color in my career, because I worked in professional men's sports in the US, which is predominantly white men, and as a senior executive in many of these very powerful professional sports leagues, I was the only woman in the room for many, many years. And in those moments where you feel gaslighted, where you'll say something that no one listens to, and then 5 seconds later, the person in the position of power, a white man, says the same thing, and everybody's like, that's a great idea. And you're like, I feel like I just said that, but that's so weird. Just to recognize those moments that they are deflating, like they do make you feel like you might be crazy, but taking a step back and really trying to pay attention to those moments, let them inspire you, and then pay attention to the people who give you an opportunity, even if they're in very small ways, and empower them, because they will be the ones that will more easily create pathways. So in your local communities, like who are those people who are in positions of power who have a empathetic, sympathetic voice and actually care about creating equity and helping them to understand that people from marginalized or underrepresented communities can't do it by themselves. We need people in positions of power to recognize that this is a benefit to all of us to actually create space for people from different backgrounds and helping them feel that you're their champion too. And that's really what I've tried to do throughout my entire career, because fighting it from the inside out by yourself is lonely, hard, and also a longer path than trying to build community around things that are for all of our benefit.
Thanks, Jess. Awesome. Second time this morning, the term of ally and find an ally has been used. I think we have time for 2 more, so standing back there.
So hi, my name is Faye. Thank you for sharing your story. It's really inspiring, and we're so all proud of you. So my question is, throughout your journey, you obviously faced a lot of different challenges, and you felt mistreated by society and men, no offense. But what motivated you to keep going despite having all of these feelings? What was the push that you had to keep you going and never give up?
Aisha, you want to take this first?
Thank you. I think it's your genuine willingness for change. All of us, most of us, we're mothers, we're sisters. Okay, I took a very maternal approach to what I was doing. Okay, it was very much a philanthropy business that I was doing. It was not to get into football, to own a football club, definitely not to become FA president, definitely, ending up where I am now. It wasn't. The dream was for change, okay? And for me, it was seeing these children, it was seeing my country, it was seeing my continent, what we were going through. I grew up with brothers. I was the only girl. I've never played with a doll, never had a doll. And the one time I got a doll, I think they stopped giving me that for Christmas, was that I took the head off and playing football with the head. I played with my brothers. They bullied me. Nobody wanted me to play. I was a little scrawny sister that they would always kick around. I was a good midfielder because I was quick and everything. And I had to earn my place, and they would kick me so that I would cry and get off. And I stood firm there. Endurance, the genuine belief that you can do it. You know, you're in it as women. You hear about us. You see all these other female ambassadors. You know, it is a genuine belief that they can do it, they want to do it. And most importantly, that you do it for change, not just for self, but for the next generation. You have no idea how proud I am that we sit here, we have inspired you, but we inspire to also aspire. So whatever it is that we've done, what we've gone through, that's great. We've handed the baton over to you. You take a little bit of our lessons and you use that to do your own and change it a little bit. There are going to be barriers that you guys will face and have to cross that we didn't have to. Hopefully what we had to go through, I don't think it can ever be as difficult for women the way it was difficult for us. It can never be difficult for women in your societies the way it was difficult for in me, you know, there's a Islam, there's a cultural, it still exists, but it can never be, because we have made that change happen. So, you know, when you say what, it's just got to come from within. You believe, I'm in it to win it. I'm in it for the real reasons, okay? So that's really what I would say.
Awesome, Aisha, thank you. Just do one last final question, just here.
Hi, so I just wanted to ask all of you, because, I mean, all of you have come so far. What advice would you give yourself when you first started out?
Should we go down the line for this one, Jess?
Sure.
Put you on the spot, sorry.
No, it's okay. Advice I would give myself, I guess, at your age, is to really try to balance all of your future goals, the things you see yourself wanting to be, and being also proud of where you are today. I think part of what got me here is definitely my ambition and my motivation and how hard I worked. Most of that was because I was so future focused that if I had to do it over again, I think I would give myself some space to celebrate and acknowledge my accomplishments along the way and recognize what I said earlier, which is that you always have a platform to influence people around you, whether you're in an actual position of power or in any role that you're playing, even within your family, your community, or your workplace.
Be here in the moment, especially this moment. This month, we always have to remind ourselves so much work has happened in the lead up to this. Let's make sure we enjoy it, right?
I think especially today with all social media, it's to worry less about what other people think, especially people whose opinions you would not actually seek out. There's so much noise, there's so many people that have an opinion about the decisions you make. It's really about being true to yourself and honoring the things that you believe in. You cannot please everybody. So that would be my advice to myself. Is so often I tried to think, well, what would this happen, and tried so much to think about outside, when ultimately it's not selfish, but it's a realization of I've got to stay true to who I am and what I believe and get after it.
Thanks, Jill.
For me, I'd say that the advice for myself would be that there are many opportunities out there in the sport for women in the sport. And when you see those opportunities, go and grasp it. But use that opportunity to make an impact, to support, encourage, and help other women and girls that are behind. And the last thing is, as women, especially when we're campaigning and rallying for the development of women in the sport, we often look at men as our enemies. They're not, they're our allies. It's not that we only want women in the sport to build a women's sport, but we want anyone who has women football development at their best interest to be a part of it. And we need them, they're our friends, and that's one thing to remember.
So true. And even role modeling, I mean, so many of you have already talked about as well that your father, you know, was an inspiration for you, Kelly. I mean, it's crucial, definitely. Aisha.
I think I would also say that each and every one of you here are here because you've earned it, one way or the other, in your countries, in your communities. You are dream chasers. You are achievers. I think, you know, first and foremost, you believed. That's why you are here. You believed that's why you are who you are. And I would also say that, yes, you come first, but it's not all about you. Whatever you do, how you think, how you want to push forward, how you want to break these barriers, how you want to do whatever, achieve, do it not just for self, but do it for the whole. Do it for your country. Do it for your communities. Do it for the world. And that's what football is all about. It is one global village, one language, one people. So that's what I would advise. And to the women out here, I say kudos. So many young women, so many young girls. Never seen this much before, you know, and it's incredible to know. So go chasing that dream. You are the same. Nobody should put you down. You can do just as much, as better as the other can do, okay? And for every day that you achieve, you go home. And even if you've had a problem, you've had a bad day, somebody's made a comment, you didn't see it, you didn't hear it. Tomorrow's another day. And you work harder, you fight harder, and you will achieve.
Thank you, Aisha. And to be global citizens, Aisha, Sonia, Jill, Jess, incredible to hear from you. Thank you so much for giving your advice, your inspirational stories, and I think we can all agree that the future of women's football is you. So thank you so much for passing on that message, and thank you for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your festival, everybody.